So in this video, what I want to share with you guys is exactly how to get this moon and sun cake design that's kind of trending these days. I decided to do this in buttercream frosting for a specific client that I had a couple of weeks ago. And so what I did is I baked an entire cake. This was about 1.5 kgs, or you can think of it as you can use a 10 or 11-inch cake. And what I did is I actually baked the two separate cakes by themselves as separate cake layers. Then I used some buttercream I actually had that is colored. That's why it has that blue color in between. And then I put it together. So this was a vanilla chocolate chip cake. If you need recipes, by the way, guys, check the description to see more details of my recipe ebook. And so after that, just kind of trimmed the sides, and I didn't want to bake separate cakes for this. This is why I did this as one cake. And then I took a 4-inch round cake pan because that is what I had. And I made the round drawing, and this is supposed to be for the sun. So one part of the cake is supposed to be a moon and the other part is a sun. So this works out better because it has less waste. And so because this was a larger pan, right, the 10-inch, it was easier to come with a 4-inch pan and just kind of trace the pattern of the round cake, then now come back and cut it out with a knife. Now I just used a regular knife and I just slowly went around kind of making sure I cut that round cake properly so that I'm able to actually cut it out and then decorate it separately. Now, I do want to mention at this point, because of what the client had chosen, which was a deep buttercream blue, and of course the sun was yellow, I ended up making the buttercream like 2 hours before, warmed it up. You can warm it up in a microwave or hot water bath for 10 minutes. Then I put it in the fridge, and then I'm going to whip it up and use it again. Now, the reason I did that heating in the microwave was to make sure that the color is very deep and dark, because that's what the person wanted, a deep sort of color for the moon. Now, once I cut this out, as you can see, I had to cut the edges of this moon to get this cake out. Once you cut that out, remember you have to decorate this separately and put it back. So I did want to kind of trim around the inside of the moon, but also trim the edges of the moon, because this little sun has to be decorated and put back. So currently, as it is, it will not fit. And so you kind of have to come and cut off the edges to make enough space for a cake that's already decorated. And since I will be decorating this separately, the moon separately, and the sun separately, you just have to kind of come back and trim it. And I actually trimmed a few times. I would trim and then I would kind of check to see if the sun is going to fit. So this was the first trim I did, just kind of getting the edges, and then of course getting the inside. Once I did that, I came back and took my sun, and again I want to take, this time I used my longer bread knife, and you just want to cut this around to make sure that it fits properly. Now, of course, if you have a mousse ring, that would be a better option because it doesn't have a bottom or top, and so you can be able to cut through the cake easily. But if you don't have a mousse ring, this is a good example of exactly what you can do. Now, once I've trimmed my sun, I have to make sure it's going to fit. So as you can see, it has a very small space. And I realize I have to trim a little bit more just to make sure it's going to work. But once I got that done, I was ready to decorate. So I used a 12-inch cake drum for this. This is a gold 12-inch cake drum. And I started with my moon because I want to place it on the large board so that I can start decorating this first. This is the one that's going to get a crumb coat, and then after that I'm going to put a navy sort of deep blue colored buttercream on this. Again, each time I place it on there, you're going to notice I'm checking with my sun to make sure that it's going to fit, because there's a specific design you want with this. You want it to look seamless. After I made sure everything was correct, I took my white buttercream and I just did a crumb coat and made sure it has covered the whole entire cake properly. Once you do that crumb coat, you can actually put this in the fridge just for a little bit, just to make sure it's set. I like doing that because crumbs, you know, since you cut the cake and all that, just make sure it's nice and smooth. I use American buttercream here, if you want the recipe, please check the description. I do have a link for my American buttercream. Then now what I'm doing is actually decorating the sun cake, and I like again doing a crumb coat because of a lot of the shaving. I do the crumb coat, I place it in the fridge, and then after that I'm going to come back with a yellow buttercream, and I wanted a deep yellow. So what I did is I used a sunset yellow color. You can choose to use whatever color you want. You can use egg yellow. I just wanted a sunset yellow because the moon, again, the inspiration from the client was this bright, sort of deep yellow color. I did a crumb coat on my little sun cake, which is about 4-inch diameter. Once I did the crumb coat, I ended up putting it in the fridge so it can set, and then I can come back with my deep yellow color. Now, please note, as I'm doing this decoration on this board, I have not applied any frosting at the bottom because I do not want this to stick, and I have to end up moving this over time. So I want to make sure that it doesn't stick on the board. After that, I came back now with the moon cake, and I applied the navy blue buttercream frosting. I started with the top, and then I went for the side. Now, because I wanted this to, have those nice sharp edges, I did the top and then the side, and I left sort of these jagged edges that you can see at the top. Once you place this in the fridge just like that, you can take it out and actually use something like a palette knife or a small knife to just cut off the edges. When the moon was in the fridge, I came back and now used my deep yellow buttercream frosting to finish decorating the second coat of the sun so that I can just get that done. Now again, this was a simple design. It didn't have a lot of piping, but it does have quite some piping. So again, your client or whoever you're doing this for is most likely going to send you some inspiration type of photo, which is what happened to me. So what I was doing was using the inspiration photo to do the piping. I usually never do like the exact same thing somebody has asked, and I usually tell them I'm going to do it slightly different. So this was, again, the piping wasn't exact, but it was similar to what the client had asked for. Once I smoothed the side, I came the top with my palette knife, and of course I'm using some of the hot water to dip my palette knife inside so that it stays warm, which is perfect for buttercream. Once both of these had been finished, I took out the moon design, which had been in the fridge, and as you can see, this is how I get my nice sharp edges. Just shave the top, and then you can now put the sun. I used literally my little offset palette knife, as you can see, and I just slipped it in there, and I put it nicely as a sun and the moon. You can adjust as you like I'm doing right here, because I did want to leave some space in between the two for piping and just for aesthetic. And then you come back with your piping. I used some fondant stars at the top. The client was turning 20, so it's 19 to 20, and voila, there is my cake. I do have some piping videos in this channel if you want to check them out to see how to do some of these piping. I'll link them below. I hope this helps. All the best.